welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who keeps all his money in the Cayman Islands. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
When you say Cayman Islands, do you mean piggy bank under the mattress? I go double security. You piggy bank and then under the mattress. It's very uncomfortable, but no one can find it.
And that's what you call the Cayman Islands?
Yeah, and then I write on Sharpie Cayman Islands. That's what I've heard.
Don't tax me.
Parentheses, offshore accounts.
I mean, your definition is as good as anyone's.
I think I'm good to go. I don't see how this could possibly fail.
One other team going to the Cayman Islands very, very soon. They're there right now. It's the US men's national team. They are there to play Cuba away-ish at a neutral venue.
And I feel for those poor journalists who had to travel to the Cayman Islands, that luxury paradise. I don't know how they're going to make it happen.
I saw an American Outlaws post saying the hardships we go through to follow the US, and it was from a balcony overlooking a beach.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good way to reward the people who traveled to that game, given that it hasn't always been the most fun to watch the U.S. men's national team this year.
Yeah, it's like an end-of-year reward.
Yeah, right? Sort of. So that costs you a lot of money.
We are going to... Oh, yeah, US soccer didn't pay for it.
Not so much now.
We are going to talk USA-Cuba, the final Nations League group stage game, because it is of relative importance. We've also got...
You made that barely convincing.
But we've also... I'm barely convinced. We've also got 10 US men's national team themed questions that we'll dig into pretty soon, because this won't be too long of a preview.
No,
Fair?
I would say not. Given that
we're going to break down how Cuba play and all that kind of stuff.
Not so much. The way they play is attempting to be defensive and hopeful.
Well, not even. Do you remember they were sort of in a mid-block when we saw them at RFK, and when we watched all that footage of them before, they kind of opened themselves up.
I'll go ahead and adjust that to poorly. The way they play is poorly. Yeah.
Okay, so to put this in context, the US does need to win this game.
They do.
In order to finish top of their CONCACAF Nations League group.
Also true.
And go to the semi-finals, which will happen in June 2020. So the US, it does matter. This game does matter in that the US does need a result. It's just that the result should be easy to get.
Yeah.
Does this remind you of any situation?
Yeah, right. I assume you're drawing some allusions to Cuba here. Because, it sort of does. Obviously less pressurized. We just need the win.
Yeah.
It's not a sort of and it seems maybe possible, but maybe impossible. With Cuba, I think we talked about this on the Friday night, Saturday morning review show, that we should be expecting the win. We should not be expecting another 7-0 blowout or something like that.
Yeah.
We should still be hoping for a solid win and a convincing win. But I think what you're pointing to is pressure is kind of on a little bit, but also kind of off. And there's a feeling of we should be able to handle this. It shouldn't be a problem.
And that's very much like the final Hex game against Trinidad. Right. So I am framing this in my head, and I think I'm putting it out there on Total Soccer Show because I think people should think of it this way, as a very miniature, low-bar repeat of that Trinidad October 2017 World Cup qualifier game.
Right.
We need a result. We should get a result, but we're going away from home. And Berhalter, again, he's played most of his games at home. The only away game so far is the loss to Canada in Canada.
Inhospitable, hostile Canada. It was the whole thing.
But so Berhalter seems to have it in his head that it's a thing that the group has to learn to go on the road and get results. So there is that element to it as well. This would be the first away win. He's taking the group away to the Cayman Islands, but they've got to get an away win. I think this is going to probably be quite an ugly game. That if the US is mentally prepared, they still come out of it with a 2-0, 3-0 win. I'll be very happy with that. Bearing in mind, Canada beat them 6-0 at home, only 1-0 away.
Right. And I think you're going to a stadium that, the capacity is 3,000 thereabout. We don't know how.
The Truman Bottom Sports Complex.
Right. And we don't know how good the field is going to be, how good the facilities will be, how good the preparation facilities will be, and all that is to say that it shouldn't necessarily matter that much, in the sense that it might matter, but I still think that the U.S. shouldn't let that factor into their considerations for this game. We want to see the U.S. come out aggressive and hungry the way they did against Canada. Maybe they don't score inside the first 2 minutes. That wouldn't be the worst thing. But I do still want to see the U.S. very much on the front foot going for it, and maybe being ruthless. Maybe they do win 5-0. That would make me very happy.
So we're not going to do a preferred starting 11,
I don't think so.
But we are going to sort of raise some of
we
the
say
questions.
We're not going to. We may end up doing it.
We may end up accidentally doing it. Here's some of the questions I have in my head going into this.
Is one of them who should be in the starting 11? Because if so, we're definitely going to do it.
I mean, most of them are, right? So, for example, do you reward Giassi Zardes with his 2-goal game, good performance against Canada, and have him start in the Cayman Islands against Cuba, or do you give Josh Sargent more international experience, more CONCACAF away experience, which he hasn't got at all? He has in Canada. He has a bad experience in October in Canada. Do you build up Josh Sargent's international experience?
I think my answer to this is I don't really care, but it's not like because I don't care. It's because my reasons for caring for both kind of balance each other out, because with Zardes, it's like, yeah, he showed he could do it. He had a strong game. Maybe we want to build on that and keep kind of developing the patterns and the rhythms and see how effective he can be. Versus Josh Sargent, he's there. We may as well give him a chance, but then giving him a chance against Cuba, and if he excels and gets a hat trick, are we going to be more impressed because it's still against Cuba?
No, because, whatever the result is, whoever scores a hat-trick or does really well, it is always, it's against Cuba.
Right.
So, all that in mind, I'm going to say I would start Josh Sargent just to get him another cap so that he can say, I've had a successful road experience, so that if we need him come the Hex next year to be on the road, at least he has this bit of experience, right? It's not the same as going away to Honduras. It's very, very different. Yeah. But it's more similar than not playing at all.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
I'm fine with that. Yeah. So I think mine sort of canceled out. So I'm willing to go with you putting it over the top of, let's go Josh Sargent.
Okay, here's another big question. If we want to take this seriously and make sure we get the win, there's an argument for just putting your strongest lineup out there. There's also an argument for John Brooks is very fragile. So maybe this would be a smart place to not start him and let sort of Tim Ream and Aaron Long play centre-back, or let Walker Zimmerman play centre-back. Where do you fall on that?
I fall on we should play some of our stronger players and not some of our others. I would be fine with John Brooks not playing this game, as an example.
I would too.
Because if for another reason, because I want to see what the other centre-backs can do if they come in against a team that we're supposed to dominate. Does that factor into how they play? Does it change the way they play? Are they more aggressive? With John Brooks, I feel like we kind of saw what we needed to see from him against Canada. We know what we're going to get from him. Maybe, hopefully, we don't need him against Cuba. So I'm okay with giving him the break.
I'm just mostly fine with not injuring him. So I think that's the best argument for not starting him.
There we are. But in other spots, like I would not mind seeing Jackson Ewell going again at that number 6 spot, or maybe seeing somebody else not named Will Trapp. And I don't mean that to be so disrespectful to Will Trapp. It's just I sort of know at this point that in my mind it's Ewell, Bradley right there, Tyler Adams theoretically, hopefully ahead of them
when he's growing his heel.
And so at this point we're looking at Will Trapp as maybe the 4th choice, number 6. I don't think we need to see what he can do against Cuba here. I think we need to see more of Jackson Ewell or more of Alfredo Morales as a number 6 or whomever else might step into that spot.
So Weston McKennie, would you start Weston McKennie?
I think so. I think just because he was so effective in that game against Cuba the first time round, playing as the number 10, kind of running midfield, being creative, making stuff happen, going for reverse flicks and shots from distance. I wouldn't mind having that energy, but also because to the point of energy, he brings in that enthusiasm and that physicality. This is going to be a physical game. I think you need somebody who's more than capable of knocking over opposition players when they try to knock you down.
Here's one wrinkle that has to be somewhere in Berhalter's mind. I don't know how high up or low down. Reggie Cannon and Aaron Long are both potentially making moves to Europe in January. It's a possibility for either of them. They're both kind of on the cusp in terms of the percentage of games they've played for the United States that would qualify them automatically for a work permit, especially in the UK, where it's a little bit tougher. I think there's a strong argument. There's two ways to this. There's an argument that says both of them should play some part in this game because they need the caps and you want to benefit their careers long term. Then there's another argument of things like that shouldn't even be part of the considerations. It should be all about winning the game.
Yeah, unless you're playing Cuba, in which case it absolutely should be part of the consideration. Because we do know that there have been moments, or at least we think there have been moments in the past when maybe a player was called in because they were looking for a move, or a player was called in because that would help the club with the kind of standing of that player. So I do think
it would help the club make the argument to MLS that they deserve to be a targeted allocation money player.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that more succinctly than I could. And so I do think that you have those considerations from time to time. Away to Cuba, even in a competitive match, it's still I don't expect it to be so much so that Aaron Long is only at 95% because he played against Canada. I still think that's enough for him to go and be fine and still get that one cap that means he's a little bit closer to the percentage necessary.
So Aaron Long I could see starting anyway because he's just, arguably one of our best 2 centre-backs, so that makes sense. Reggie Cannon, it's a tougher ask, right? Because you've got Serginho Dest, you've got DeAndre Yedlin, who maybe deserves a start after only coming on for the latter part against Canada. That's the tougher ask for me. But he may be the guy that needs it more.
Yeah, he may be. And I think also, though, that you got DeAndre Yedlin some minutes. Maybe he's okay with not having to play against Cuba. I mean, I know everybody always wants to play every single minute, but maybe that's where you could explain it a bit more of like, we want to get Reggie some more minutes, but also maybe the cup. And then like it kind of it maybe alleviates some of that burden. But I do think it makes sense to go with Reggie Cannon. Maybe it makes sense to go with DeAndre Yedlin at right wing. Maybe it makes sense to go with Serginho Dest at left wing. And we just go with 3 fullbacks as 2 attackers and a fullback.
Or Dest at left back. And you could conceivably, with substitutions, get all of them on the field at some point, right? But again, I feel like we're both looking past Cuba in a way and looking at things like international caps. I'm always really aware that it's kind of dangerous to be doing that.
It's a difficult position, woe is us, for us to be in, because like we don't want to look past Cuba, but also simultaneously to say like, oh, it's a big test, it's a big challenge, how are we going to get past them, would be disingenuous. Like it's also not, but it's a competitive game away in CONCACAF. It can always be physical, can always be difficult. I wouldn't say we're looking past them. I think we're looking the appropriate amount slightly past them.
Okay, just beyond them.
Yeah, we're not looking totally past them.
I think as a concept, I like your earlier idea of resting guys here and there, like say John Brooks, where it makes sense, but not just saying like, let's give a bunch of guys a run out. Right? There is a nice middle ground where it's a really competitive team and we still win the game, but we don't risk hurting people. Yeah.
What about in the midfield, though? What would you like to see there? Because we saw
definitely Jackson Ewell, like you said. I understand your argument for McKennie. Did he score a hat-trick last time? The fastest hat-trick in whatever history. I could see an argument for resting Weston McKennie in this game and letting Alfredo Morales start at the number 8 spot. And I think then my preference would be Sebastian Lletget's going to be forced out of this team when Christian Pulisic comes back, pretty likely, right? I wouldn't mind seeing Lletget get another sort of 80, 90 minutes in the number 10 spot.
Yeah, okay. That's fine with me. Yeah. I mean, I think we could see that. We might see McKennie as a 10 and Morales as an 8. Yeah. We could see any number of kind of rotations.
Lletget, though, right?
I don't think I would be too bummed out.
Maybe Lletget on the wing if Morris or Areola doesn't need to go again. Part of the upside of Lletget is that he can play attacking midfield or wing.
Since you mentioned the wing and versatility in the options that some of our players have, I'll just keep asking you, do you want to see Serginho Dest play this game? And if so, where would you most like to see him play? Because I do think we could see him in like between 2 and 4 positions potentially.
I think I'd like to see him play left back
to start.
Okay. Just because I think we're going to have moments in the future where he needs to. I think right back's the strongest spot, but I think there'll be moments in the future where we need him to play left back. So why not play him at left back?
I agree, and I also think
honestly, I'm also thinking of the Cannon work permit needs the caps situation. So I clear out the space at right back by having Dest play left back.
I agree, and I agree also because I think that this is a good time for the United States to kind of I think it's okay to have game plans for when you know you're going to have to be a bit more defensive against stronger opposition. I think it's okay to have game plans that are much more attacking when you know you're going to have more of the ball and more chances. This would be one of those latter opportunities, and so it makes sense to me to try some more attack-minded players who can get forward but can still defend. Tim Ream, I guess what I mean is not going to go bombing down that left wing or not do it nearly as regularly as, say, Serginho Dest.
And he could play left centre-back in Brooks' absence, so that might work out perfectly for Tim Ream.
Exactly. So, like, I want to see the U.S. essentially try some different stuff, keep it mostly consistent, but build on aspects of the game plan we saw against Canada so that, again, it still is sort of consistent direction in where this team is going as opposed to like, we're going to change it up entirely.
So speaking of, I think the one major difference against Canada that I'd like to see repeated against Cuba is the defensive shape.
Right.
So we talked about it a lot, right? Where instead of being the 4-4-2, it was more like a 4-2-3-1 shape. And it was a lot more intelligent about not leaving gaps between the lines, not leaving space to be exploited. Cuba's not good enough to exploit any space that we give them. So in a way, that doesn't matter as a consideration for winning this game. Again, looking just beyond them, not entirely past them. But I think if we do line up in that defensive shape, it would at least be an indication that this is the defensive shape going forward.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. Because, again, to reference the show from Friday, like if you see the U.S. back out in this kind of 4-4-2 with the front twos attempting to screen midfield, it might work. But it still has me then confused of what's the point? That if like Canada is a team that can play their way through that, then is the bar for playing weaker teams Cuba? Like that's not a thing that's going to really help us that much. So it makes much more sense to me to change it up and keep that sort of defensive shape that we saw against Canada and cause problems that way.
I don't know why, but the fact that we both want it so badly makes me think that maybe we're going to see not the 4-2-3-1, but the old 4-4-2 because Berhalter will roll out whatever works against Cuba.
And to be honest, even if we win with that, that means way less to me than winning and changing the defensive shape.
Yeah.
Just because then suddenly I'm like, okay, but then did we actually learn anything? Or is it still sort of like, but see, it works against terrible opponents, so maybe we should keep trying it. Like, I think we have enough of a sample size to say, at least I do, to say that does not make me comfortable playing that sort of defensive game plan. I think it gets overrun very quickly. So if we're going back to it against Cuba, I don't really understand the purpose of it, and that will bum me out pretty hard.
So the game is Tuesday night. It's listed as a 7:30 Eastern kickoff. It's on Fox Sports 1. We will have a review of the game that night. We said we'd be happy with a convincing result, right? It doesn't have to be 7-0 again, but it'd be nice if it was 2 or 3-0 and a comfortable performance.
That would be nice.
And get us top of the group through to the semi-finals.
That would also be nice.
Yeah.
I like semi-finals of things.
I like today's sponsor.
I do too.
Today's sponsor is SeatGeek.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel like ticketing websites make getting to the event difficult on purpose?
I actually do sometimes.
You won't feel that way if you use SeatGeek.
You will not, because they are dedicated to caring about the customer experience, which means they don't have annoying sites that have lots of pop-ups and they redirect you to a different page where suddenly the price is increased and you have two fewer tickets and it doesn't really make any sense how that's happened. It's very simple. You can search your event near you. You can search like teams that you follow and find
near and far.
Yeah, good opportunities, which I did based on a tweet from Charlie Boehm this weekend. He was pointing out that there was, I think, high school football playoffs that were $7 and you could, or maybe $5, and for $7 you could go see the Washington professional football team play because that's how bad they are this season. So I looked at SeatGeek, and it is definitely true that Washington professional home games are not exactly the draw they once were. Lions are visiting this coming weekend. You can find tickets for $12.
Wait, I thought NFL games were always sold out.
Depends
how good the team is.
When the team is 1-9 and bottom of their division and things are not good and they have fired their coach, maybe there's less motivation to see them, to the extent that the only home game the Washington professional football team has coming up that is above like the $20 mark is against the Eagles, and I'm assuming that's because it's Eagles fans coming to enjoy slaughtering the Washington team at home in their own stadium. That would be my guess. And you can contrast that with their games on the road against the Panthers. That starts at 88. Against the Packers, those tickets start at 127. So road games, those teams are doing fine. They're still selling fine. But if you want to see a football game in Washington, you can do so for cheap.
I can't believe we ended up talking about the other football. One of the rare times on the Total Soccer.
One of the rare times.
And the reason Taylor was able to find all those different ticket prices is that SeatGeek pulls information from everywhere. It is the best aggregator of tickets from all over the internet. It's like the whole ticket internet in one app.
It is, and it lists them like obviously by date, but you can see all the games that are upcoming, so you can sort of decide like, okay, like I really want to see that team, but tickets are 14 times more expensive than this second team I most want to see, so I'm going to go see that second team. Like you can kind of contrast it that way and find what fits your budget the best, and you can also figure out if those tickets have the value you want because we have the traffic light system.
Yep.
You can be guaranteed that you're getting good value for your money.
Well, whatever the value, you always get $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use the promo code. So download the SeatGeek app. Download the SeatGeek app. Use the promo code TSS for $10 off your first purchase. That's TSS for $10 off your first purchase.
Thank you very much to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. Daryl Grove, we have sort of done the USA-Cuba preview such as it is.
Yeah.
Should we get to the questions that you mentioned previously?
So we put out the call for questions via email and Twitter. We got, I don't know how many, but we've chosen 10. We got a lot of questions.
Did you break down and start taking questions from Twitter? Did they have to be submitted?
I actually did. I broke down and said send them via the form or send them in a tweet. My thinking was that because Twitter has a limit on characters, it means that the questions will be shorter.
You've heard of threads, yes? Did we get any threaded questions? Okay.
I want to say no one gave us a threaded question. I'm going to go back and check. If we did get a threaded question, it won't be being answered.
All right. Well, we did get a variety of questions. We'll get to them now, starting with Matthew Maxon, who asks or says, given the success of a more direct game plan, what do you think the Berhalter plan looks like going forward?
So my thinking on this more direct game plan has evolved a little bit after reading some stuff from Joe Lowry, reading some stuff from Sean Brooks at positionalplayscholar.com, and also rewatching chunks of the game and chunks of the October game. I now think that essentially we did go more direct, but only because Canada just left gaping holes for us to go more direct.
All right.
Right? So the more vertical play, I think, was into spaces that Canada had left wide open. Right? So if Berhalter's whole plan is we disorganize the opposition and then we exploit that space, if they're going to send Alphonso Davies way up the field and leave a gaping hole for Paul Arriola to run into, it just makes sense to quickly play the ball into that space, right? If they've essentially disorganized themselves for us, then why not take advantage of it straight away?
So then my assumption, though, was that, like, they identified Alphonso Davies as getting forward after the U.S. went ahead 1-0 in the second minute, and then they sort of adjusted their game plan to attack that space. I'm going to assume that since you went back and watched the October game, you were inclined to say that that's a thing that's maybe been the case further back?
Yeah, if you watch because of the way that 4-2-2-2 shape works, the width comes from the fullbacks, right? So even in October, it was Laria on one side, I believe it was Miller on the left. So the fullbacks got forward in both systems. There was always space in behind the fullbacks. We just didn't hit it last time because we weren't good enough to hit it. We weren't, and actually, I still maintain, I think we were right on the Friday review show, that the big thing is that we were able to win balls in midfield, right? It's about the defensive setup that allowed us to win balls and then exploit those spaces they'd left.
Yeah. And
last time out, we weren't winning the ball back, so we couldn't get into those holes.
No, and like I would say, not only we're not winning the ball back, but like when we were getting it back, it was because Canada sort of gave it away, either through a misplaced pass in our defensive third or like a slightly long ball, but not particularly long ball that was maybe just slightly overhit. The point of that being that when the United States would get possession back, it was routinely from the goalkeeper, from 6 yards from their own goal.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to build all the way up the field with Canada sort of committed further up because we've allowed that to happen because they've overrun the midfield. Friday night against Canada, hosting Canada, the U.S. were able to be a little bit more aggressive in sort of winning that ball back in the middle of the field, further up the field. So then
the
you
defensive
can go.
shape,
exactly,
right? We didn't leave two central midfielders with space all around them to be exploited. We essentially had three because Leggett would occupy like the tip of a midfield triangle often in terms of our defensive shape. Yeah. So to answer Matthew's question, I'm not really convinced that there's necessarily a game plan to go more direct all the time, but I'm hoping there is a game plan, like we talked about with the Cuba defensive shape. I'm hoping there is a game plan that sort of has this more sensible and effective defensive shape, which allows us to add some effective counter-attacking to the possession play where we maybe like spread the field and have guys on either touchline, and there will be some slow build-up, but then also it'll be interspersed with some quick counter-attacking because we'll actually win the ball in midfield.
Right. Yeah. So would you say then that like a key part of our game plan going forward from an attacking standpoint relies on being able to win the ball back and having a better defensive game plan?
I think we've got so used to watching the US not do that for almost a year that we've forgotten that that's a key part of a lot of teams' plan is to win the ball in midfield and then go.
And this, strangely, does actually make me feel slightly better because one of the big questions I had coming out of that win over Canada was like, is this a sign that Berhalter has moved completely away from what we were doing and that's how it's going to be going forward?
Yeah.
Or, again, it was still under the assumption of he's moved completely away. So it was either like, has he moved completely away permanently or was this just a one-off desperation game? And in future games, we're going to go back to like the 4-4-2, sitting in, trying to possess the ball. And it made me a little bit more concerned than seeing it from the perspective of, no, this is sort of an adaptation and evolution defensively to allow us to then have more of a proactive attacking game plan that features aspects of what he wants to do. Then it's not a complete abandonment. It's a pretty big adjustment defensively, a slightly not even like a slightly moderate adjustment from an attacking standpoint, but then it keeps kind of the cohesion of what's happening.
And it was designed to exploit a weakness that Canada exposed, right? Which is that, to me, that's the most encouraging thing because that's not a thing you would say about the Berhalter era so far. So maybe the thing I would like to see going forward is Berhalter coming up with game plans to exploit what the opposition do.
That would be an ideal game plan, an ideal approach to managing a soccer team. Yep, sure.
Ready for the next question? It's from Henry Bushnell.
I know Henry.
The Henry Bushnell of Yahoo. He just asks, he started a sentence with a symbol, which is weird.
Unacceptable.
Percentage chance US qualifies for Qatar 22. Percentage chance that we get through the hex and qualify for the World Cup.
This is not academic at all. This is maybe not even based on like rational faith. But
I made up a number.
I am probably more optimistic than a lot of people, and I think that may be misguided. Like it may just be that I'm still existing in a world of but the U.S. still qualifies. Even when they didn't, I still maybe have that perspective. I also do think that a lot of the hex teams are going to be weaker than they've historically been. I would remind people that this Canada team is probably the best Canada team we've seen in 10, 15, 20 years, if not ever.
Yeah.
So like I look at that.
You going to give us a number soon?
Yeah, I'm just looking at like explaining why I think my number is higher than a lot of people's because initially I was like 60%. I'd say I'd put myself more at like 70% right now.
I've got 85.
Okay.
85%, right? And honestly, I would say for the 2018 World Cup, it was probably a similar number, but there were a lot of things that...
I mean, it was probably 90% until that game in Cuba.
Yes,
like, that's really where we were at that point. Like, we're going to win. It's fine.
It's always a high percentage, right? So, I mean, 85% may even be, me being cautious because of what happened last time.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that maybe, no disrespect to Henry, but the best way to answer this is to say that I think we are both optimistic about qualification, even if we still have some big questions and, for me, some concerns about the state of the team right now.
And we sort of think we almost know what the hex is going to be, right? It's probably going to be the USA, Mexico, Costa Rica, Jamaica,
Honduras,
and El Salvador.
Yep.
Yeah.
Panama have fallen way down those rankings. The only wrinkle could be if Canada find a way to get a bunch of points. Maybe in 2020 is when they'd have to do it.
They're going to just miss out to El Salvador. Because we took a good look at the FIFA rankings and how the point system works, and they're going to just miss out, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So you look at some of those teams, and I fully back the United States to be able to get results at home.
Top three, right?
Yeah.
Top three, you automatically qualify. If you finish fourth, you end up in a playoff against teams from the lower qualification rounds.
And I do also think that it's difficult to say because we've only seen the U.S. away to Canada right now. But in that game, we didn't see a lot of variation from Berhalter in terms of what he was trying to do, which in that situation was not great. But I say that just to say that, you look at the arena model of qualifying for the World Cup for the United States, and it's win at home, hope for a draw on the road, set up shop and play for a draw because it's going to be really difficult. Thus far, I haven't really heard Greg Berhalter talk about that being his plan, about that being the strategy of we're going to sit off and be defensive and hope for the draw, hope for that 1 point. So I kind of right now am expecting the U.S. to, with the kind of patterns we've seen, and if they continue to develop those, implement those on the road and go for those 3 points. At least that's what I'm hoping for, and that's where my 70% comes from.
All right. Next question from Robert Cordova. Any thoughts on at US Soccer __ ESP? This is the Spanish language Twitter feed of US Soccer. Not tweeting anything in over 1 whole year. I'm sure we both have all kinds of thoughts.
I mean, a lot of them contain expletives. So, that's about where my level of thinking is. I mean, I'm not surprised. I don't think it's been a priority. I don't think it will be a priority. I think
it makes a mockery of una nación, uno equipo.
Yes, it certainly does. So, I mean, that's my thought, basically, is it's really frustrating. It doesn't really make any sense. It seems, again, pretty tone-deaf from the Federation that has been consistently tone-deaf this year. So, that's my thinking right now.
My thinking is they should just hire someone. Hire one person whose job it is to produce Spanish-language content full-time. It's that simple. Pay them however much it costs to pay someone to produce Spanish-language U.S. national teams content in Espanol full-time. Because I think US Soccer's probably run into a problem that a lot of MLS teams seem to run into, which is they launch an En Espanol Twitter feed or content, and it's basically just someone translating the English language content or someone who's bilingual who's tasked with doing it part-time. Hire one full-time person and you'll have an endless flow of Spanish language content. Right? Have that person write for their website, write for Twitter, write for US Women's National Team Twitter, write for all the Twitters in Spanish, and then you'll have the problem solved with one person.
With one person. And one other thing I would add to that is emphasizing not just translating the articles that are already being written, not just translating the tweets that are already being tweeted, because I think so oftentimes the U.S. Soccer Twitter focuses on the players that are of greatest appeal, the best stories for their dominant audience. But I think Latinos would probably rather hear about Latino players. Not all the time. It doesn't have to be just focused on that. But you should gear your or structure your content towards the audience in which it will be received. And if they're reading a Spanish translated article about how great Weston McKennie is doing in the Bundesliga, maybe some people will want that. But I'm sure a lot of people would be equally excited to hear about, say, Ventura Alvarado, captaining Necaxa right now, and how well they're doing in Liga MX. It doesn't just have to be Spanish-speaking players and things like that, but I think some more representation would probably be a good step.
And it is time that US Soccer turned this around, right? There was a story recently of Hugo Perez. He thinks part of the reason he was let go as youth team coach was because he was speaking Spanish to his players, and he was told not to do that, and he was kind of I'm still going to do that. I mean, the fact that there's this perception that US Soccer from top to bottom is English language only or English language heavily preferred is a problem. And I think hiring a Spanish language content person would be at least one big step towards making that not the case.
I would agree with you, my friend.
Okay.
So let's hire some people. Hopefully Robert's question has been answered. Let's answer Alex Carnegas' question. Would it be better for Aaron Long's career, to go to Southampton or Marseille? As Daryl said earlier, Aaron Long has been linked with a move this coming January in the January window.
To Southampton and Marseille,
There
apparently.
we are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for Long's career, Southampton. For the US men's national team's benefit, maybe Marseille.
Interesting.
Okay.
I kind of would have said the exact opposite of that. So
okay,
well,
let me game this out then. All right. So for Long's career, I think the best move is Southampton. One, because he's already 27, right? So if he's going to go to the Premier League, he probably needs to do it now. If you think of your career like going to the pinnacle is going to the Premier League, I think he needs to do it now. Because if he goes to Marseille, does well for a couple of years, then he's almost 30. And then I think teams will be looking at him thinking, I don't know, we don't need to sound like an untested 29, 30-year-old. So I think the gamble has to happen now in terms of being a Premier League player. Right? Let me game this out. Also, at Southampton, the coach is Ralph Hasenhüttl, who is a former Leipzig coach. He's worked with Rangnick, I believe. He's a believer in the Red Bull pressing style. So I think he would be going into a similar stylistic situation, and a coach that's going to ask of him similar things to what's been asked of him at Red Bull New York, where he's done really well.
Okay.
Right? Also, Hasenhüttl has Southampton are not doing very well right now, so they do sort of there's space for someone to be a fresh face to be inserted into the team, and Hasenhüttl sometimes plays a back three, so there's literally more centre back spots available at Southampton. Right?
Yep.
Okay. At Marseille, he's going to have a slightly.
By the way, my yep does not imply that you have swayed me here. Yeah.
No, okay. let me game this out, though.
Yeah.
Then at Marseille, I think it's better for the US national team. One, because of something Berhalter said in the post-match press conference after Canada. Like, he was praising Aaron Long, but he also said that because of the way New York Red Bulls play, Aaron Long isn't always great at selecting the correct pass, because the Red Bull style is to go vertical really quickly, right? So if you went and played for a team that wasn't a Red Bull style team, which Southampton kind of is under Hasenhüttl, that might benefit his US national team like passing profile. You know what I mean? He would learn different passing options. He's also going to have probably an easier time establishing himself at Marseille, and the US national team doesn't risk him being like out of form or having like a Josie moment where he's like embarrassed in the Premier League because it's all too much too soon. So maybe Marseille is the safer option for the US national team, especially if we're thinking about we're going to need him in September 2020. If the Premier League destroys him by September 2020, then suddenly we're in trouble. League One probably a little easier.
It's interesting. So a couple things. It's interesting the way you interpret that question, and I'm not saying incorrectly, but like your I guess conclusion is that he obviously wants to play in the Premier League because that's the best league on the planet.
Where the most money is.
It is, if that's his goal, which is like, it's interesting because like that's not kind of where I took that one. And you're right that it is the most high profile league. It's the one that most Americans watch. So if he wants to kind of like increase his fame and increase his fortune, it probably is the Premier League that makes more sense.
I would argue every player wants to go to the Premier League, more or less. They all talk about it.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody who's ever said they don't want to play in the Premier League. So Lionel Messi doesn't want to. Haha, in your face. That's definitely it. That's the exception, or that's the rule, not the exception. But I think like it's strange to say about like a Marseille team who are currently second in Ligue 1 that it would probably be easier for him, in my mind, long term and short term to get minutes, because Southampton in the relegation zone right now. We have seen what happens when relegation teams start bringing in players, and what tends to happen is maybe some hit, a lot of them don't. There's a lot of rotation that if he comes in, starts a game after like when he's been there a couple weeks, looks bad, maybe they don't take that risk on him again, and then suddenly now he is in like, and if they get relegated, now he's playing for a championship team and maybe isn't even playing that much until he really establishes himself.
So but if you're asking me to defend this, I'm saying this is probably his one shot at being a Premier League player.
Right.
And you either take this shot and see if you can do it, and part of it would be taking a gamble on you can be part of turning Southampton around, or maybe this chance never comes again.
Yeah. So I guess what I would then say, like, if I could like blend the two, maybe where I'm going to come from it is more of a, like, for him, if that is his life goal is to play in the Premier League and that's a thing he wants to really push himself and see if he can do, then that is probably the one that makes more sense. But to your point of him being 27, I think going to Marseille, I do think the French league is a bit more forgiving. You don't have the physicality and the intensity and the intense spotlight on you. I feel like that's a league where he could play longer, more consistently, is my at least assumption. So that's where I say I think I would rather see him go to Marseille. But if he,
I'd like an excuse to watch Ligue 1.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I'm with you there. But if he would rather go to the Premier League, then I'd rather him go to the Premier League. I guess is the best way I can answer it.
He does. With that haircut.
Mm-hmm. With that haircut? Yeah. Or he just really likes Hawkeye. That's the other option.
Maybe it's both.
It could be. It could be.
No one really likes Hawkeye.
I'm not even sure Jeremy Renner likes Hawkeye.
His wife supported his avenging to get him out of the house.
That's true.
I'm just saying.
That's very true.
All right, today's sponsor.
Played 18, shot 18. Get out of here.
Today's show is sponsored by...
I get if you're very accurate. That doesn't mean you can hit the ball 500 yards. Just throwing that out there. Get it together, Hawkeye.
By not Jeremy Renner. Today's show is sponsored by Hims. A one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness for men. Today we are focusing on hair loss, or what we're trying to achieve, no hair loss.
Yeah, exactly, because 66% of men start to lose their hair by the age of 35. Once you've noticed that thinning hair, it can be too late. So some folks, say maybe Brad Guzan or Greg Berhalter, go the shaving the head route so no one will ever tell. But as we've established previously, 1 day of stubble shows you where that bald pattern is.
Yep.
So unless you want to shave your head routinely and regularly, which itself then becomes expensive and difficult, and you might nick your head, and then that's kind of a public thing, you could just go with Hims, which is a way easier solution for treating hair loss.
And because society is unfair, I do think part of the unpopularity of Greg Berhalter is that he is not a fully haired man.
I mean, George Costanza would certainly agree with you. Larry David as well. They're the same person, but it still counts as two.
And as the Hims copy said, this Black Friday, which is coming up, right? Secure the best deal of all, a healthier, thicker hairline.
That's right.
Imagine the lines outside the door to get that.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me, but it makes sense because you... the holiday season is coming up. You're going to have maybe the in-law who is happy to talk about ooh, that hair is thinning, huh? You don't want to hear that.
Oh, that in-law.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't want to deal with that in-law. And so you can either avoid that in-law entirely.
When they say it, you say, no, it's thickening.
Exactly. That's what Hims will allow, because you don't have to deal with the awkward in-person doctor's visits or long pharmacy lines. As Daryl said, Hims makes it very, very easy, so you don't have to deal with the Black Friday crowds.
Instead, you get connected to real doctors online, which will save you hours, no lining up with the Black Friday crowds. It's completely confidential and discreet. You answer a few quick questions, doctor reviews it, and then if it's right for you, they'll prescribe the medication to treat hair loss, and it's shipped directly to your door.
And you don't have a stampede of humans to deal with, so that's good too. You can try Hims today by starting out with a free online visit. Go to forhims.com/totalsoccer. That's forhims.com/totalsoccer. Forhims.com/totalsoccer. Prescription products are subject to doctor approval and require an online consultation with a physician who will determine if a prescription is appropriate.
See website for full details and safety information. This could cost hundreds if you went in person to the doctor's office or pharmacy. Remember, it's forhims.com/totalsoccer.
Thank you to Hims for sponsoring today's episode. Back to some questions, Daryl. I believe we left off with Alex, so let's go to Randy, who asks, which players in the pool would benefit most from a move to a better league, and which league or leagues would be a good fit?
Okay, we've already talked to Aaron Long. I think it is it's now or never for a move, right? Because of his age.
He was my number one, and then I realized that we had this question coming up.
I would say Paxton Pomykal. I don't think it would be the worst thing if he played another year in MLS, but I think he's ready to go to the Netherlands or maybe the Bundesliga. I could see him fitting in there. He's got the good mix of technical ability, great technique, great eye for passing, not bad dribbling, not easy to shake off the ball. And he seems to have that hard work, self-improvement aspect to the game, which we kind of learned is really important for young Americans applying themselves in Germany. I think Paxton Pomykal fits the profile.
Can you say any place for FC Dallas real fast?
And he plays for FC Dallas?
I think you could say pretty much the exact same thing for Reggie Cannon, which is my other player that I had. Thank you for helping me out with that one. But yeah, I think Reggie Cannon is the other one that makes sense to me. And it really is everything you said, basically. That
Where would you send him?
The Netherlands or the Bundesliga makes sense for me for Reggie Cannon. I think that's just because that has become the place that Americans go to develop, in my mind. So why not continue that trend?
So in my notes, I've got Reggie Cannon as a good fit for the EFL Championship.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think
you want to toughen him up a bit?
I think he'd do well there. Right.
I
think an up-and-coming team that might be chasing promotion, I think would be a good fit for Reggie Cannon. partly just because he's kind of young, and so he's got time to like gamble on. All right, this might be a future Premier League team, but I can spend a couple years getting knocked around in the Championship and earning my way up.
I don't necessarily want...
He'd make a lot more money in the Championship than in MLS as
This is true. I don't necessarily want a number value, but like the other thing I'm kind of confused
15.
by right now... There we go. 15 million? Is that what you think he should cost?
Oh,
that's what I was going to go with. Well, it's just... I'm confused. Like the story today was that... I forget who it was who were after Gianluca Busio. Fiorentina were after Gianluca Busio. They had offered $4 million. Apparently Sporting KC are holding out for $10 million. Make of that what you will. But it does seem like the trend has been very young players who can be kind of bought for a much discounted rate. Chris Richards for $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Part of that is the existing relationship with Dallas and Bayern, but still, you've got young players before they've kind of moved into that next level of starting regularly, playing regularly, like kind of a consistent seasoned pro, as much as a like 21-year-old could be. So I feel like Reggie Cannon is in that category. So I don't know then, does that increase his value or decrease his value?
Richards, right?
Yeah.
So he's older than Busio, he's older than Richards.
Right.
Does that increase or decrease his value?
Because it moves him to that level, but then he has more experience that you can sort of look to as like, okay, he has been a professional. He has kind of accomplished some stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're a championship team, does that make you pay more or less because you're not getting a 17-year-old?
I don't know. I'll be honest, I'm very confused by how Major League Soccer values players because they ultimately sign off on the transfer, right? Even though Cannon came through the DA, I think Dallas would keep most of the money. There has to be sort of MLS agreement.
They might keep all of it if he's homegrown. I forget how this works.
Right.
But
yeah, the valuations are weird. I couldn't tell you what would seem an acceptable offer for Reggie Cannon.
All right.
I would hope that maybe it's like Luchi Gonzalez and the people at FC Dallas have the best interests of Reggie Cannon at heart and are sort of willing to accept a reasonable offer rather than hold out for a gigantic number.
All right, let's hope for that. We'll see if that happens. Another one who I don't really know why I'm going with this one, but I'm going to go with Will Trapp, who is consistently linked with a move away, but he is one who we have seen what we need to see from him. We know what he's capable of at MLS level. If he goes abroad...
He has a Greek passport.
What's that?
He has a Greek passport.
There we go.
So he's easily in the EU.
So does that maybe help him develop more, or have we kind of reached the level of development that he's going to develop to?
I would be surprised if he gets a move to a big European league.
Yeah.
He may end up just deciding, I desperately want to go to Europe, and then he does end up in maybe literally Greece, or Turkey, or one of those sort of
seems to be Scotland and the Championship are the two where he is most heavily linked, most routinely.
Yeah, even the Championship I feel like might be a bit of an ask for him. He wouldn't be embarrassed in the Championship, but I don't think he would be a valuable asset that a team's really going to go after. Yeah. That makes sense?
Yeah. That makes total sense to me. So those were the obvious candidates. The other one I looked at, because I looked at the wording of this very carefully, was I think my assumption was MLS players moving abroad, but it could have been European-based players who needs to move up to another level. Okay. But looking at a lot of looking at the 9 or so who came into this past camp, I feel like they're all about where I want them to be right now. Maybe a few could get a move, but for the most part, does Weston McKennie moving right now to a more competitive league or a tougher league, does that really help him when he hasn't even really cemented his role with Schalke right now? I don't know. Pulisic is at Chelsea. I think that's fine. Yeah. Zach Steffen on loan at Dusseldorf, but he's on loan from Man City. It's tough to look at any of these players and really say they need to jump. Even a player like Julian Green at Greuther Fürth, he's scoring goals there. He seems confident.
I think he's found his level.
I think he probably has. Yeah. So I don't know if I want to then see him thrown up into the Bundesliga again and we see what happens. Maybe a lot of those European players are about where I want them to be for their development.
Maybe I'd like Richie Ledesma to go from young PSV to actual PSV.
That is fair. Yeah. I think
not
that
exactly
one
a
makes
transfer
sense
so much as a career progression. I've got 2 more quick ones. Jackson Yueill, I think, could do well in La Liga. Okay. He's quick and technical. I could see him as a Santi Cazorla type player, maybe, in an ideal world.
Hopefully fewer injuries.
So yeah, but Jackson Yueill to La Liga, maybe, and Jordan Morris. Maybe it's time. Maybe you've done all you can do in Major League Soccer. Maybe it's time to go to the Bundesliga or the Netherlands.
That dude's never leaving.
He's probably not, is he? But I think it would be great if he decided to right now.
I think I didn't really fully appreciate...
He could catch someone's attention right now, right? With his performances in MLS and performances for the national team.
100%.
There's got to be some team out there that's ooh, we're interested.
And I would assume, based on the number of appearances he's made under Berhalter, that he would probably also be a shoo-in for a work permit, because he seems like a regular performer and appearance getter. I just think he really, really likes living in Seattle, based on everything I have read from the few comments I heard from him after MLS Cup. Obviously, that was after his hometown had just won the title.
Yeah,
so.
it would be a terrible time to say, I'm looking at a move to Europe.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
But we shall see. It would be, if ever there were a time, it probably is now, where it's like, yeah, you have reached this next level in your career. Maybe you continue to develop and get even better in MLS, but maybe it is that move to push yourself that would be required in order to get to that next level.
All right, ready for the next question?
I believe so.
Christine Red asks, is there any evidence to support the idea that Berhalter is more inclined to call up MLS players than players of equal ability in a different league? Or is that an unfair narrative?
I mean, the answer to this is yes, essentially. Because, yes, you could absolutely make that argument based on the percentage of players called into any given camp. But that said, it is an unfair narrative, in my opinion, for a number of different reasons. The biggest one is just that it's the domestic league, and that's where you're going to be able to most readily, most easily pull players from.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because of his own familiarity. A lot of that is because that's sort of what U.S. soccer does. Looking at like January camps, you're always going to be calling in MLS players, which does then give them more of an advantage because it increases familiarity.
Yeah, I think there's an argument that Berhalter is more inclined to select players who are in, quote, the group, unquote, like players he's already worked with. And it's not because they're MLS players, it's because he's already worked with them.
Right.
But a lot of those players have come from MLS because of things like January camp, right? The other thing is, I think when people look at the, say, percentage makeup of a roster and see that there's like this many MLS players and this many European players, it's worth bearing in mind that we just don't have that many European-based players, right? Dwayne Holmes is the one where you could say, like, oh, Holmes should be in the squad over, say, Roldan, or Holmes should be in the squad over Leggett. But that's really just one player we're talking about, right? You actually have to dig quite hard beyond that to find more European-based players who are really established with their teams, and it's an easy argument for a call-up.
Yeah, and like I think we've been somewhere in between on a player like Alfredo Morales, where we had legitimate concerns about aspects of what he brings to the midfield, but then watching him in person, we saw some things that made us feel a little bit better, and so we're okay with him getting called in, but we're not going to be furious if he's not. We're a little bit more frustrated with Dwayne Holmes, as you mentioned, but another example I would say would be one like Andrija Novakovic, where we will still get those tweets or still get those questions about like, why won't Berhalter call him in? Why isn't he getting any looks? And the answer is like, he's not scoring for Frosinone in Serie B.
Yeah.
And I'm not watching Serie B, but I can guarantee you that he probably should be scoring, and that he's not means that he shouldn't be called in. And like, I think you still get those like, oh yeah, but he's in Europe, so he's doing better, I'm assuming. And you don't really know that. I'm not saying that's always the case, because I do not think it's the case for Dwayne Holmes. I think he should be in there. But I don't even then think that that's a bias of, oh, well, I want to call in just MLS players. I think every coach wants the best players they can possibly get. But I think it probably speaks to Berhalter either doesn't know if Holmes fits the system, doesn't feel like he has the rapport or relationship enough to believe Holmes fits the system, or maybe something else entirely. But I don't think it's just, no, he's in England, I don't want that.
Yeah, and again, that's just one player, right? And then if you really wanted to keep looking at the balance of MLS versus European-based, you've got to take injuries into account. The fact that Tyler Adams in Germany injured a lot, John Brooks in Germany injured a lot, Tim Ware would have been called up, injured for a long time, Christian Pulisic recently injured. Like we don't have that many senior players in Europe, and once a few of them get injured, like suddenly it's reasonably thin, right? Then the other big element that I think is worth talking about is people will argue for a call-up for Richie Ledesma or Alex Mendez.
I noticed you saying
Gloucester.
Senior players, and it felt like that was a
and I'm deliberately saying
thing.
that because one thing you could accuse Berhalter of, because he's kind of said this, is he only wants to call up players that are seeing first-team action, right? So he is going to favour Walker Zimmerman over Chris Richards, because Chris Richards does not have a track record of playing first-team football, right? He's playing for Bayern Munich U19s. Right?
Yeah.
And so to Berhalter, that's not... You need to be something of a seasoned professional, as in you need to have played first-team professional minutes for him to consider you for the national team. I don't necessarily think that's a bad metric. The place you can quibble is with guys like Ledesma and Mendez and Gloucester, where they're playing for young Ajax and young PSV, which is playing against grown men in the second division of Dutch football. But Berhalter seems to consider young Ajax as kind of what the name says it is, which is the youth Ajax team, where really your teammates are all kids, right? So I can see the argument for you haven't played a full professional game yet. I'm not going to consider you for the national team.
Yeah, and as like a thought experiment, imagine he does bring in Alex Mendez. Imagine he starts Alex Mendez in a friendly against, I don't know, Jamaica. Like, if Mendez looked bad in that game, then the argument is like, well, he's really young. It's only his first camp. Let's give him another chance.
Yeah.
If he looks bad again, it's like, well, he's really young. Like, we want to see him get first team minutes. Like, it doesn't, in my mind, really help you that much to call in those players when you haven't even really solidified who your starting 11 is going to be and then who challenges those 11. Like, let's get the determined, definite starter, and then we can kind of bring in players to see where they fit in that pecking order. But I'm with you that right now, as much as I would like to see younger players who could be exciting, it's because it's an exciting possibility, but not yet a reality. And then one more point I wanted to make on this one, if you don't mind. I don't want to hijack your point too much.
No, well, the one more thing I was thinking, I will get to after you.
Go ahead.
Said your piece. All right, so the one counter argument to this idea,
I think we're going in the same.
Are we going in the same place? Yeah. Is that Serginho Dest at the start of this season? Is he really so many times better than Serginho Dest at the end of last season? Whereas, like, he was playing for young Ajax last season, and it was clear he was eventually going to get moved to the full Ajax team. But there's kind of a refusal to really call him up for the senior team, or be even considered for the senior team before he'd played senior minutes.
Right.
Like, maybe it was worth like mapping out the potential and saying, "Oh, I can see that kid's going to be brilliant."
I mean,
you can also argue he was with the U20s that time, so he's in the system anyway.
And it's a maybe. It still is a maybe. That maybe he's good enough. We don't know. But I do think once you start starting regularly for Ajax in the league, in the Champions League, getting consistent minutes, you've shown you can do it at that level, which means you can do it for the national team or should be able to. So to me, you still...
I'll go with that logic.
Yeah, I think so. The last thing I would say, though, to like bring it back sort of to...
Were we going the same place, by the way? Or did you
not quite,
idea?
Actually. Okay. Because, like... I still think, though, like, I understand where the question is coming from in terms of, like, there is...
The question being, does he favor MLS players
Yeah,
over
because
Europeans?
there is evidence that he calls in more MLS players, again, because of all the reasons we've talked about. And
just numerically, you mean?
Yes,
yeah.
But also because he has the January camp. That's the first camp he's in charge. And now we have the group. And a lot of those players came from that camp. And so, strangely, it's a weird way. I'm going to try to explain this. But essentially, like, them being MLS players... It doesn't show to me that he has a bias towards MLS that is almost immaterial where they play. It's more so that where they play allowed them to be available for the camp that was formative in Berhalter establishing his system. So it's not that they are MLS players. It's that they're the players he feels most comfortable fitting into his system. And that is why I think there's that bias towards the group. I don't think it's necessarily MLS. I think if Liga MX had a same schedule and we were able to call in a bunch of players from Liga MX, I think we probably would.
Yep, I think that's absolutely it. Because he literally said, I'm more comfortable with the options I have than Dwayne Holmes, probably because he's worked with Roldan and Leggett, etc. more times. Yeah. All right. Ready for the next question?
I think so, yeah.
All right, next question is Serginho Dest related. It's John Salazar is asking, where is Serginho Dest's best position for the United States?
I don't really have a clever answer for this because I want it to be like wherever Berhalter says. But I think what we saw this past game against Canada right now, my inclination is to say right back. That's
the obvious answer.
He did a good... I mean, it's just difficult because there are three other options there that we have seen play under Greg Berhalter. And whereas with left back, it's essentially Tim Ream and then Hope. Is
Hope what you call Daniel Lovitz?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe not. So it seems like it should be left back, but I think what he offered as a right back, I was fine with, and he looked very good doing what was asked of him. I think Reggie Cannon has too, but I think Serginho Dest is a better player than Reggie Cannon, so I go Dest.
I think he's a better player than DeAndre Yedlin.
Agreed.
I think it's just an upgrade all around to have Serginho Dest play right back ahead of Yedlin and Cannon.
Yeah.
Did your opinion on his 1v1 defending change against Canada?
Yeah, we had some people say that I'm biased and that I'm sure that he's a bad 1v1 defender. That's not just my opinion, I would clarify. But it changed a little bit, but it is still I would equate it with the DeAndre Yedlin sort of frustration that we both have about turning his back. That he can not do that for 15 games, but he came in, he subbed on, and he immediately turned his back when a cross was coming in.
Yedlin?
And there, I'm just I haven't seen him do that in a while, but I've seen him do it enough consistently over the years to know that it drives me nuts. I am not there with Serginho Dest, but I will say that it probably is true that when he gets beat in a 1v1, or if he gets magged, or if he has to commit a foul because he got beat, it will probably stand out for me more so. I don't know if that's bias, but that's the best way I can explain it.
I will say I went back and took a look at his like 1v1s against Alphonso Davies, and he mostly stood up to him. Yeah, there's a lot of times. I actually noticed, I went back and looked at some other Dest 1v1 defending. He's actually very good at just getting very tight to someone and just making life really hard for them. Because then if you only get tight, the danger is always that the player can then burst away from you with pace. No one seems able to do that because he's so quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, but I think
for an 18-year-old as well, I think it's good.
I think what I'm trying to say though is like it's a thing that I have read about as being a vulnerability in his game. It's a thing that I have observed being a vulnerability. But I really like Serginho Dest. I want him to start for us consistently. So it's not as though it's a thing that I'm like, oh, he can't do it. He's bad. It's more of a like, I hope that isn't an issue because I don't want that to be an issue.
Yeah.
That's about where I am with it.
And then in terms of his best position, I would say if you watch him play right back, he does things like the soul. Remember, he got fouled after winning the ball back and then doing like a soul roll to get away from someone and got clipped. I can't picture Yedlin or Cannon doing that. No. He just brings a level of quality and
I would say technical precision. That he can bring a ball down like under pressure. He can settle it. He can dribble a little bit. He can find his way into a pocket of space that he can then play a ball from. I think he does that better than a lot of players on that team, and certainly all of our right back options at this point.
And the reason I'm now more
unless we're going Tyler Adams at right back,
I'm now more into him as a right back than say a right winger because I think if you can have that ability to like work out of tight spaces, starting from deeper, it lets us work our way out. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like early on, I was a proponent of playing him on the wing just to make life easier for him. But I think he's already at a stage with this Canada performance where he doesn't need life made easy for him.
All right.
You know what I mean? He can just be a contributor.
I do know what you mean, but now this begs the question, which maybe is why you structured it this way, from Matthew Anderson. Who do you foresee getting the bulk of starts at left back once World Cup qualification begins? If we're both saying Dest is maybe a right back for us at this point, who's going on the left side, Daryl?
Right now, I think it's Tim Ream.
Agreed.
And I am happy with it being Tim Ream.
I think so too.
I think it's Tim Ream because Berhalter seems to love him, right? He wears the armband a lot. I think almost all of his recent performances, including the Gold Cup, have been excellent. At left back, I think he's a fine left back. I think Dest is option number 2.
Yeah, I think that's probably about it for me. I don't think the other options we've seen, no disrespect to Daniel Levitz, but he is not moving the needle for me. He is not in that spot where I'm like, yeah, that's a capable left back option. I would not love that. I do think it's maybe Serginho Dest is the backup left back. Maybe we see some more experimentation. But I think, to your point, what we saw from Ream, especially in this game against Canada, was being good on the ball for the most part. Some bad giveaways, but I think everybody on the team had a giveaway or two. So I guess, that then is the mean or whatever becomes the norm. But like I appreciated what he could do on the ball. I appreciated him defensively, and I appreciated him.
A lot of wins.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like waiting and then stepping in to win the ball when Canada thought they had an outlet, and like they would try to chip it over onto like the right wing, Canada's right wing. Ream won that ball or fought for that ball, or at the very least put it out for a throw in for Canada. But they never really had any joy going down that side, and I think it's because he was very confident in what he was doing and successfully completed his assignments.
So we're super happy with Ream at left back for World Cup qualifying.
I'm happy with Ream at left back.
Okay. Is it worth? I think it's worth just making the very obvious point that the reason Dest is a weaker left back than he is a right back is that he's right-footed. Right?
Yeah.
That's the very basic, simple thing, and he can do it perfectly well. But, I'm a big proponent of you should be that footed player on that side of the field.
Right.
Otherwise, you end up taking odd angles.
Right.
I think that's as true of Dest as anyone.
Yeah.
But I would still take it over, say, a Daniel Levitz.
Yeah, I agree. Because, yes, you may have the, Arjen Robben who cuts inside, and then Dest is, like defending with his dominant right foot. Maybe that makes sense. But if you're trying to block across with your weaker foot, it's still your weaker foot. And in the same way that it's harder to play across with your weaker foot, even at professional level, you're still not going to be quite as confident. Same thing.
Yeah, when he gets forward, he's going to be maybe more inclined to dribble infield and go outside and cross it. Yeah.
And I would venture to guess that the more times you see a defender go for the desperation block and get beat by like a cutback, it's probably when they're leading with their weaker foot. Because I think for me personally, if I'm defending Daryl and he dribbles onto my right foot, I feel confident stepping in and winning that ball more so than I do stepping in and winning with my left foot.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, your non-dominant foot lends itself to more sort of reckless challenges or more physical challenges because I know at least some of me is going to get the ball, so I'll go for it. So yeah, again, I think more effective as a right back.
All right, 2 more questions to go. Next one is from James Porter. What do you think Triple G's record with the national team would be? That's Berhalter, for people who don't know. What would his record with the national team be if Tyler Adams, John Brooks and Josie Altidore had played all his games? And how do you think the US fan base's perception of this new era would be different as a result?
I do think it's a lot better. I really do. I think that we maybe still have some of the concerns that we have had. I think Does having John Brooks in really help us in that friendly against Mexico? Maybe a little bit, in that he wins some aerial challenges. He's a little bit more physical.
I think maybe in the Gold Cup final against Mexico.
That's another big one. But I think we still have some of the vulnerabilities and issues. Putting Tyler Adams in place of Michael Bradley. I know people don't like Michael Bradley. I know there are people out there who don't like him. But Tyler Adams is not going to be able to deal with 4 central midfielders when he isn't part of a midfield too. That doesn't change that necessarily. But I do think...
He would have dealt better, but not enough to solve it. Yeah.
But I do think that if you put in those players, it makes the game plan a little bit easier to execute, because Jozy Altidore is very good at hold-up play, as we have talked about. I think he fits the system the best of any striker.
He can come back and connect play in a way that Zardes and Sargent aren't perfect.
Absolutely, and we've seen if the job of that number 9 is occasionally to stretch the defense, Jozy can do that. But if it's also to drop in and link up play and facilitate attacks, Jozy can certainly do that. That makes sense to me. John Brooks probably helps the team, helps organize the defense, is that veteran leader and that veteran presence.
And I'll go as far as saying Adams would add bite and tackles to the midfield, even when the tactical system wasn't designed in the best possible way to do that. So,
and we're talking center back, center midfielder, center forward. That is the spine of a team that we have missed a lot of.
So how much better would results have been? I know it's really hard to play this what-ifs game, but how much better would results have been? In my head, I would say maybe things would be very similar, but we wouldn't have lost away to Canada.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't have been that. Definitely the lowest point of the entire year was the away loss to Canada, right? If you said the Mexico 3-0, bad as it was, still only a friendly. This was for points, haven't lost against them in 34 years, etc., etc. It felt to me like people were angriest after that away loss to Canada.
I think knowing what we think we know now is the best. I'm going to put that. I think I agree, because at least in the Mexico game, there's an argument to be made that the United States was maybe trying to do the things that they did in the win against Canada by spreading it wide and then looking for those vulnerabilities, and they were just under so much pressure that they could not find their way out.
We use it to experiment.
Right.
Okay, so if you accept my premise that the away game against Canada, the defeat was the low point, then if maybe that hadn't happened with Brooks, Adams, Altidore, I think that affects the way people see Berhalter.
Yeah, and I also think that if you have John Brooks, veteran presence, been to a World Cup, Jozy Altidore, veteran presence, been to a World Cup, Tyler Adams hopes to go to a World Cup, not quite the veteran presence, but those first 2 I mentioned, I also do wonder if maybe there's a little bit more talking in the locker room about, hey, this isn't working, hey, we need to change this, we need to adjust that. Even
a bit more nous about how to play an away game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even what we saw in the Canada game, when we saw John Brooks tell Jackson Yu, you got to go do this.
Yeah.
Is Walker Zimmerman as inclined to do that? Even Tim Ream, is he as inclined to say you've got to do this when he himself is kind of learning the system?
Okay, so we agree that things would have been better and Berhalter's reputation would be maybe a little higher with US fans. I've got a wrinkle to throw in for you, though. If Tyler Adams had been available for the entire year, do you remember the early conversation was about...
Yeah, right back to centre midfield.
Right back to centre midfield, the Tyler Adams role. That's been essentially abandoned, right? We've changed that completely. I think the national team shape and style would have gone down that path. And I honestly think a lot of what we thought about Berhalter would depend on how successful that was, because almost everybody was against it, right? Really did not like the idea.
Adams being right back to centre midfield?
Yeah. If Berhalter had been proved right, that was really workable, and it actually gave us a great right back and gave us Adams in midfield, because part of the thing was that he would transition there. I think that might have been a big tactical theory proved right win for Berhalter, or he could have had to give up on it after 3 or 4 games because it just wasn't working, and it would have been a tactical theory proved wrong thing for Berhalter. So I'm basically saying that experiment would have run its course, and we would judge Berhalter either positively or negatively based on how successful it was. As things stand, we never got to run the experiment.
One clarification there, though. Didn't it kind of run its course?
He's barely played.
No. I'm saying, didn't that experiment of right back to center midfield, we did that and it seemed like it was working, and then we just kind of stopped doing it.
Because Adams was unavailable. Yeah.
I mean, but Adams never did it. I guess that's my point. Is
we did it once against, I want to say, Ecuador.
But didn't we do it with Nick Lima and it was fine? Yep. And it was okay, this could be the way forward. I guess in my mind, I feel like we still don't know why he stopped doing that.
I'm pretty confident it's because Tyler Adams, who it was absolutely designed for, was unavailable. I think it's that simple. I think maybe it's not designed for Nick Lima in the long run, right? It's designed for Tyler Adams, and the fact that he has this long-term injury, I think Berhalter's probably thinking, all right, we'll wait till he gets back, or we'll just do something else. Like the thing with having the right back just go really high and wide all the time suits Reggie Cannon better, right? So I think it's more like Reggie Cannon's our best right back, so let's go with this plan instead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think there's still a chance that we ever see that happen again? Or do you think
I think it's possible. I think once Adams is back and definitely fit, I think Berhalter might, almost like go through his files and be like, oh yeah, we never really gave this a try.
I guess it is entirely dependent on if that is the reason why he went away from that. If it was just that he had been expecting Tyler Adams to be available and he never was, versus this would work maybe with Tyler Adams, but nothing else around it is working, so I've got to change the system again.
I mean, he specifically said it was designed for Tyler Adams.
Right.
So if he'd been fit, I just think that would, all I'm saying is, it would have been a big thing that we judged Berhalter on if we'd had multiple games where Adams played the right back to centre mid role, but we never got to see that anyway, so we can't be, there's no way to judge him on that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a thing we might have judged him on, but we can't judge him on.
Yeah, which is the premise of the question, right? Is what would have happened if Adams was available? That would have happened, and I think it would have changed the course of how the national team lined up and did things.
Okay. Do you have a speculation on how it would have changed it?
I think it would have worked, but I can't prove it, right?
Yeah.
I have no evidence because we haven't had more than one game of him doing it. Yeah, I think it would have worked.
I think given the way we've seen the United States struggle to execute some game plans that I would say are slightly basic, I don't know if a right back becoming a central midfielder and all the adjustments that are required defensively would go so seamlessly.
Let me give you this, though. When the right back goes to central midfield, you essentially have 4 central midfielders, right? You have like the number 6, you have Adams alongside him, and then you have the 2 number 10s ahead of him. You have your sort of 4-man midfield, which might have matched up numerically with Canada's 2-2 4-man midfield. Like it might have all worked out nicely, but we never got to see it.
At the risk of continuing this, but don't you only do that when you have the ball? And then as soon as you lose it, doesn't Tyler Adams have to drop back to a right back spot?
It depends where the ball is. It's like when it's in... The idea is that when it was in transition, then coming back the other way, you've got that extra defensive midfielder and Adams' ball-winning ability. So the way I heard Berhalter explain it was like a counter to the counter that you were set up to win the ball back after you'd lost it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it might have worked. We'll either never know or we might know in the distant future.
All right. We shall see.
Ready to move on?
I believe I am.
All right. Andrew Moore asks, what would a successful 2020 for Berhalter and the men's national team look like, and what would make it a total disaster?
It's tricky to answer because there are so few like big things happening in 2020 for the U.S. There's a lot of friendlies. Then there's the potential Nations League final, semifinal if we make it there, and then there's World Cup qualifying. To me, like if we make it to the Nations League semifinal, we're going to be playing stronger opposition. So probably a successful 2020 would be winning that, or at least going to the final and playing Mexico. And like ideally, the best possible one would be beating Mexico and then starting World Cup qualifying off with wins all over the place.
Yeah.
The medium one would be like going to the final and maybe not getting embarrassed by Mexico, but then also starting World Cup qualifying on a solid foot. And then maybe a disaster would be certainly not making it to the Nations League semifinal to begin with. That would be a bummer.
Yeah.
Playing very poorly there and then dropping points.
That would happen this year, right? Not making it to the semifinal would happen if we don't beat Cuba tomorrow.
Yes, I guess that just makes it more of a bummer in 2020, but that doesn't necessarily affect the 2020 standing. I think it really is just how the United States does when they qualify for that tournament, which they will, but then also if they struggled in World Cup qualifying, that would be, even if they won the Nations League and then lost the first 2 games, I think that is pretty much a disaster.
I think it's fair to say almost no matter what happens in the Nations League, we prefer a good performance, right, in the semis and hopefully the final. 2020 will be judged by what happens in World Cup qualifying, which starts in September, right? The dates aren't out yet, but it starts in September, which could mean we play in the September, October, November windows. We could play anywhere between 4 and 6 hex games. We might have a good idea of how World Cup qualifying is going, and it really will be all about that.
Yes.
Yeah?
I think my absolute worst case is the United States makes it to the final of the Nations League and then loses to Mexico and then maybe gets 1 point from the first 2 World Cup qualifiers, but it's spun to us as progress. We made it to the Nations League final and it's sort of spun that way. That would probably be the disaster in my mind because it suddenly is not only is it not good, but also the narrative is, but it's fine and everything's great.
All right, but forget what the US soccer narrative is, just in terms of us judging it. What's really important is I'm saying what we can judge 2020 on is how World Cup qualifying goes, right? It's really all about September, October, November.
What I mean more so is that if you see US soccer still being things are great, then to me it's not even disastrous enough that they're yeah, you're right, it's got to be changed. This is not good anymore. Ending on 2020 with everything is bad, but US soccer still everything's great.
I see.
That's what would be a disaster for me.
What you're saying would be a disaster is if World Cup qualifying went off to a horrible start. but US Soccer were firmly saying, no, we're sticking with how things are.
We made it to the final in the other
right.
thing, so it's all good. So I think that is my disaster, but I absolutely am with you that it's all about World Cup qualifying, and that has to go well.
And what is a good World Cup qualifying start? I've got on my page, win all your home games. Ties versus Mexico would be acceptable at home. Don't lose any away games, and don't draw any winnable away games.
Yeah.
Like if we go away to El Salvador in September and draw, I'd be thinking that's not quite good.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how the World Cup qualifying starts. Because if it is another, like, flipping what it was last time around, if it was, like, Mexico away to start and then, say, Costa Rica at home or some variation of that, it is a tougher one. Having said earlier in the show that, like, I want us to go out and try to get 3 points on the road, that makes more sense to me. Saying that if it did start off the way I just described and we came away with 4 points, a draw at Mexico and a win at home against Costa Rica, I'd be pretty pumped.
I'd quite like the way the schedule works is for us to mirror what happened last time out. So we'd have a really good sort of yardstick to judge it against, especially because Costa Rica aren't as good as last time.
Are you with me that all right, say we start out with a game against Mexico, first game of qualifying at home. In
Columbus.
We draw 1-1. Or 0-0. We draw 0-0. Like, are you happy with that result given the way our last 2 games against Mexico have gone?
Yes.
Yep, I'm right there with you.
So it'll be the first time we haven't lost. It'll be progress under Berhalter, and it would be a better result than when Klinsmann started the campaign for 2018 when we lost at home, right? That would be progress. I honestly think any non-loss result against Mexico at home is okay.
Yeah, okay. So then what is your... To restate, what is your like disaster of 2020? What is the worst case scenario for you?
Again, like almost, even though I'm a Nations League stan, no matter what happens in the Nations League, the disaster is a bad start to World Cup qualifying.
Okay, so but what is like the bar for like okay and then bad underneath it? Is it like if we get 2 points from the first 2 games, 1 home, 1 away? Are you okay with that?
No, it depends who it is, right?
Okay.
If it's Mexico and Costa Rica, maybe, but if it's like El Salvador and Honduras, then no.
Okay.
Then I'm panicking. Yeah, I'm really panicking. So that's a lot of points dropped early on. Yeah.
Right. So then it goes back to your point.
So it's all relative to who the opponents are.
Right. So it goes back to like, don't lose against beatable teams, don't draw against winnable games as well, basically.
Yeah, that would be the
And don't lose against drawable opponents, sir. Yeah, that all makes sense.
And then not Berhalter or men's national team, senior team related, but another big win in March of 2020 will be to qualify for the Olympics for the first time since 2008.
I would be fine with that.
Yeah, I think that would be a major, we've talked about this before, right? We don't need to go over it again. That would be a major step forward for the US soccer men's program is to get the U23 team to the Olympics.
Yes.
Right. So we'll know that in March. So your milestones are March qualifying for the Olympics, June, hopefully Nations League semi-finals and final. And then the real deal is starting in September, World Cup qualifying in the Hex.
And I do just want to reiterate that Andrew's question was about the U.S. men's national team, because obviously if this were just about U.S. soccer, then our goal would be the women winning Olympic gold as well. We would throw that one in there. But with just the men, I would say not being terrible would be a start, and then qualifying for the Olympics would be a bonus.
You ready to close out the show with some scouting?
I think so.
All right. We have many scouting reports that I'm excited to read because there's some exciting names in here. Would you like to kick us off, Taylor?
I would, with the exciting name of Damon Kiso. Damon, thank you. Kiso, I believe it is. Thank you for sending me the pronunciation that I immediately forgot. Scouting Harvey Elliott, 16-year-old English midfielder for Liverpool. Elliott has been getting minutes for Liverpool's U23s this season, as well as making his first team debut in their 2-0 win over MK Dons in the Carabao Cup. However, he ran into some trouble when he was fined £350 and suspended for 14 days by the FA for posting a Snapchat video while he was still playing at Fulham. He moved from Fulham to Liverpool. In the video, he used some terms to mock Harry Kane and was required to take an education course. Speaking of Fulham...
Wait, what did he do? Do you know?
I'm going to... I honestly, I'm avoiding it because I don't know the proper parlance for it, but I'm going to assume
the parlance of our times.
It was references to Harry Kane being differently abled.
I see.
That would be my guess. So speaking of Fulham, they're awaiting a tribunal decision on Elliott's transfer to Liverpool and are asking for £7 million in compensation.
Okay. John Adams, not that one, is scouting Cheyenne Harrison, the 22-year-old English striker for Almere City. Cheyenne has 7 goals in 15 appearances for Almere City in the Dutch second division. Greg Berhalter's not impressed. After scoring his 6th of the season against Go Ahead Eagles, Harrison celebrated with his teammates, but that didn't stop him from catching a beer thrown from the stands with his already raised hand and then miming as if he were finishing off said beer. Dutch second division soccer is really something to behold.
The only way to be cooler, finish off that beer. Brighton Castle.
Did Donovan do that once? No, sunglasses is what Donovan did.
Is that what he did?
Put sunglasses
Somebody,
on. Yeah.
we've definitely seen somebody drink a beer, and I cannot remember who it was, but somebody definitely did that. Brighton Castle scouting Lee Kang-in, 18-year-old South Korean midfielder for Valencia. Lee got his first Champions League start in Valencia's 4-1 win over Lille. He started the game as a right midfielder, but was switched to left when Denis Cheryshev was subbed off due to injury in the first half. Lee was largely ineffective in the game, and all 4 of Valencia's goals came after he was subbed off in the 54th minute, but still, Champions League minutes for Lee Kang-in.
Not too bad, not too bad. Russell Varner is scouting Alex Mendes, the 19-year-old American midfielder for Ajax. Russell says Mendes was named to Jason Kreis's U23 roster in preparation for Olympic qualifying, in a crowded midfield that included the likes of Aronson, Ledesma, Mihailovic. Mendes has played in 10 games this season for young Ajax, starting 4 and tallying 1 assist and a little more than 340 minutes. I do know that in the first U23 game against Brazil, which the US lost 1-0, Mendes only got like 15 minutes or so, but had a couple of nice little passes.
And were they playing last night as well?
They played the Cayman Islands representative 11.
Yes.
So Chile dropped out because of all the unrest in Chile right now. And because the tournament was being held in the Cayman Islands, they kind of just quickly put together a Cayman Islands 11.
Right.
Cayman Islands. Gran Canaria.
Canary,
Canary Islands.
There
right,
we go.
Let's get this right. The Canary Islands 11.
Right. That makes sense. And I believe they struggled for a while. I think they ended up winning that one, but I think it was like 0-0 for a good long while.
Yeah.
Against a team that I forget who tweeted it, but were smashed by Argentina 14-0. I think Travis Clark, tweeted that one. So
it's not a great outing for the U23s.
Well, luckily, we're going to talk some more about them. Nick Imhoff scouting Emmanuel Sabi, 21-year-old American forward for Hobro. Sabi scored Hobro's lone goal in a 2-1 loss to Odense in early November. His goal came on a free kick around 20 to 25 yards from goal that he hit up and over the wall and into the top corner of the net. He followed that up in their next game with a half volley with his weaker foot off a botched clearance into the bottom corner. Lots of descriptions there. His consistent run of form earned him a call-up to that same U23 squad.
Ira Jersey is scouting Ashley Sanchez, 20-year-old American attacker for UCLA. Ira says Ashley Sanchez has once again found her form just in time for the NCAA playoffs. She helped with 2 assists in the 14th-ranked Bruins 4-2 win over USC, number 6 ranked, thereby breaking the school assist record with 39 in her 3 years of collegiate play. I mean, I was impressed, but I thought it was a single season. Still pretty good over 3 years. Yeah. 39 in 3 years of collegiate play. Ashley Sanchez was massive down the stretch of the Pac-12 regular season, helping the team win 8 of 9, getting 3 goals and 9 assists during that period. A lot of stats in there. But they're all good.
Yeah, UCLA, good. Katie Sutton scouting Katie Cousins, who's also good. Katie Cousins is a 22-year-old American midfielder for the University of Tennessee. Cousins' college career has come to an end this week. It came to an end when UT failed to earn a berth in the NCAA tournament. Cousins was a consistent performer in the midfield and finished the year with 4 assists and 1 goal. She graduates in December and will be eligible for the 2020 NWSL draft.
I look forward to seeing her in the NWSL because she's a local player, right? She's from the Richmond area. Matt Koss is scouting Lucas Toussaint, 22-year-old French midfielder for Lyon. When asked about Lyon's recent loss to Marseille, Lyon coach Rudy Garcia said Lucas' presence in the midfield was what the team missed the most. Toussaint also helped Lyon battle to a 3-1 win over Benfica in the Champions League.
Todd Ito scouting Takefusa Kubo, 18-year-old Japanese attacker on loan at Real Mallorca from Real Madrid. Kubo scored his first La Liga goal in Mallorca's 3-1 victory over Villarreal. He received the ball just outside the box, took 1 dribble to the left, and then rifled the ball past the keeper with his left foot. The goal makes him the youngest Japanese goal scorer in the history of Europe's top 5 leagues. He also won the penalty that led to Mallorca's first goal, so solid all-around game. Kubo did not, however, get a call-up to Japan's upcoming World Cup qualifiers. Since the 2020 Olympics are being held in Tokyo, the JFA, the Japanese Football Association, is focused on winning gold in men's soccer, with Kubo being one of the stars of the team, and none of the young Japanese stars under the age of 22 were called into the senior Japanese team as a result.
Okay. Jesse Franco is scouting Matteo Retaccio, the 18-year-old Italian-American midfielder for Liverpool. I think I know what this is. Jesse says, Liverpool announced last week that Matteo has signed his first professional contract with the team after joining in the summer of 2018. Just let that sink in, everybody. We've got another American signing a professional contract at Liverpool.
Get him on that Nations League plane.
Matteo started off this season well before going down with injury, but the Liverpool press release notes that he's expected to return to action early in the new year.
Nations League plane. I assume that exists. Steve Renard scouting Yuri Tielemans.
They're building it specially.
I think so. 22-year-old Belgian midfielder for AS Monaco, Yuri Tielemans. Tielemans played a starring role once again for the Foxes.
Did he play for Leicester?
Oh, I said AS Monaco, didn't I?
Yeah, I mean,
it
says AS Monaco in their notes.
Is he still on loan from Monaco, or has he been signed permanently? Is that what it was? Is that why Monaco were in the thing? Either way, he definitely plays for Leicester. After returning from wrong one. Tielemans played a starring role once again for the Foxes in their 2-0 win over Arsenal. He set up Jamie Vardy's goal with a slightly delayed run to get into position for the assist that came across the box, passing magically through 2 defenders in the process, or so it appeared, says Steve.
He was on loan last year and has been signed permanently now. He is a Leicester player through.
Not sure about that one.
Chloe Crumrai is scouting Sophia Smith, the 19-year-old American forward for Stanford. Chloe says after returning from a nearly year-long ankle injury, Sophia Smith has helped lead the Stanford Cardinal to their 4th consecutive number 1 seed in the NCAA Women's Soccer Tournament. She finished the regular season with 10 goals, 5 assists, and appears fully returned to her pre-injury form. I remember a US youth team where she was the player, right? So, yeah, I'm glad she's back from that year-long ankle injury.
And playing for the juggernaut that will win all things. Francisco Sarmiento scouting Danny Leyva, the 16-year-old American midfielder for AS Monaco. No, just kidding. Seattle Sounders. Seattle Sounders. Leyva celebrated the Seattle Sounders' victory over Toronto FC in the MLS Cup final after he returned from the U17 World Cup. Francisco is guessing that Leyva will split time with the Tacoma Defiance and the Sounders next season. I will add that while he definitely celebrated with his teammates, Danny Leyva being 16, not so involved in the beer showers that happened.
I want to see him replace Gustav Svensson.
Yeah?
Or Christian Moldan.
I think that could be a difficult challenge. We'll see what happens.
Danny's up to it. Dylan Tilbury is scouting Cole Bassett, the 18-year-old American midfielder for the Colorado Rapids. Dylan says Bassett has been training with Arsenal U23s. It's unclear if this means a move is in Bassett's future because Arsenal and the Rapids share some ownership. Brian Sciaretta of American Soccer Now reported in September that Bassett is seeking to acquire a Greek passport that could help him avoid work permit issues if a move happens. Could he buy Will Trapp's Greek passport?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's how it works.
Pretty much.
Maybe just don't advocate it on a podcast. You just got to do it quietly.
You just got to take the picture out, put yours
just scotch tape your own photo to it. Perfect.
Easy.
What could go wrong? What could go wrong?
Nothing.
Do it.
Thank you.
Don't tell TSA we sent you.
Thank you to everybody for the scouting reports. If you haven't listened to Soccer 101 yet, go find
it together.
The Johan Cruyff episode is good, right? We put work into it. It was oft delayed because we kept putting more research into it.
Yeah.
And then we managed to get most of that research into one fast-paced, entertaining, informative episode. There's my review of our own show.
I agree with that. I agree with that review entirely. Other than to say that we got most of the relevant research. I didn't get all my research, but I think a lot of it was not relevant.
You have a page of irrelevant research that got left out?
Kind of. You don't want an entire explanation of what the Hesperia Mutiny was and how it didn't really factor into too much?
But it's good to know you had that backstory.
I got excited. I wanted to know what it was. Anytime there's a mutiny, I'm like, let's talk about it, including Tampa Bay. I want to talk about them too.
So Soccer 101 is the podcast. Please go and find it. More episodes coming your way soon, including, say it quietly, a Pro-Rel episode. It's going to be a Pro-Rel episode.
Definitely say it quietly.
Definitely say
People
it quietly.
will yell.
Before that, we will be back with USA v Cuba review late Tuesday night. We'll have that show for you after the game. Until then, I will say, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Why is Tampa so obsessed with pirate culture? The Buccaneers, the Rowdies, and the Mutiny. It's a lot of sea happening down there.
Because it's all about the bay.
I guess so.
It's all about
but
the bay.
You don't all have to be pirates, you know. One of you could be the Foxes if you want to, is all I'm saying.
Foxes don't go in the water.
You don't know. You don't know what they do.
I do know that foxes don't go in the water.
They could be the porpoises. Anyway, right back at you, buddy.
The manatees. That's what they should be. The Tampa manatees.
Perfect.
Thank you. Listeners, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.